I'm Melanie Johnson, along with my co-host Jen Foster. We are both 13-time best-selling authors. We've published over 2,500 books and made all of our authors #1 bestsellers. We own Elite Online Publishing. If you want to become a best-selling author, look us up at eliteonlinepublishing.com. Now, welcome to the podcast that shares secrets from top industry experts that show you how to get lasting success and results. This is the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hey, Melanie Johnson here for another great podcast along with Jen Foster. How you doing today, Jen?
Doing great. How is everyone doing?
All right, so we are going to learn a lot of stuff today. We are going to learn about tech, about how to have technical solutions. I'm always wondering, are there the secret tech that we should be using to make more money with our business and make it more streamlined? We're going to learn about that and leadership and a bunch more. We have got a terrific guest, Matt Rosenthal, with us today, who is going to teach us all of these wonderful things. But first, I want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast. All right. So make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends. And if you haven't seen already, our latest book, Podcast Authorized, How to Turn Your Podcast into a Book or Your Book into a Podcast. Make sure you grab that on Amazon. All right, so I want to know, Matt works with all these CEOs, CFOs. He teaches them how to get their systems better, use the right tech for their company. So I want to know, what should we be using? So Matt, welcome to our show. Thanks for coming today.
It's really great to be here. And I want to thank you guys. It's a great topic, and you guys are doing a tremendous service by putting the information out there and having me on to share.
Great. Well, tell us, Matt, kind of your background and how you got into this and became this business leader.
So let me work backwards, right? So
Okay.
what I do now is I'm an IT and business strategist. And what that is it's combining both of those to help business owners actually do just what you guys said, which is to maximize their technology, to use it in the most productive, streamlined way and get the most value out of it so that they can reach their business goals. So it's like looking at putting those together and saying, are they in alignment? If your business goals for the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years are to reach certain levels and to implement certain solutions, but your technology isn't ready, isn't positioned to actually match those business goals, you're just going to kind of spin your wheels. It's not going to happen. And that's common, right? So there's always budget involved, and so there's always a spend involved and return on investment analysis. That's where everything kind of comes together. And so that's the space that I live in, but it's also the space that we start every conversation with everybody that we meet. So, how did I get to this point? Well, and so my company, aside from doing that, we provide all the typical services. We do cloud. We do managed services, which is basically everything you can think of when it comes to the day-to-day support for an organization, antivirus, and we do all the typical tools and services that you would think an IT service provider provides. But again, it all starts with having those business conversations, because otherwise you have no idea what problems you're solving. So that's where we are and who we are today and who I am today. I took a really odd route to get here. I got into IT back in the very late 90s. Prior to that, I'll just tell you quickly, I grew up very, very poor, living on government subsidies. And, when I was 12, I had lost my father. And so there was one of those kind of unfortunately typical stories that you hear from self-made entrepreneurs, where they had this rocky road of things in life that kind of shaped them and molded them. And what that does over time is it gives you a certain view and a certain perspective on the world, but also business. And so, through the years, I did a lot of different things, but I got into IT in the late 90s, climbed the corporate ladder, working for some very large companies in New York City, and did all that traditional stuff. And that gave me a really good perspective on how to run business, how CEOs and CFOs think in billion-dollar companies, which I worked for. And then over time, I found out that I had an entrepreneurial spirit and that I actually didn't want to be in this cage of corporate, and I wanted to go do my own thing. And so there's a long story in there, several hours, but I ended up doing my own thing and starting out with one customer and building it just one at a time from my basement with no employees, just me doing all the work. And over the years, through mergers, acquisitions, and just, organic sales, I built it up to what it is today, which is a multi-million-dollar company. Done a couple of mergers and acquisitions over the past few years. Ultimately ended up buying all the partners out. So I'm the only owner of the company today. And what happens over all that time is you make so many mistakes and you fall on your face so many times that those lessons become the most valuable asset that you have, which is what I often share even with my clients, my IT clients. We have these business conversations, but I oftentimes find out that, or it ends up developing where people end up asking me all these questions about their business, about finance, about marketing and sales, because they see that I have a general knowledge of all of these things. It's not that I'm smarter than anybody else. I've just been doing it for so long and I've made so many mistakes that I kind of see a clearer path. And so that has nothing to do with the IT side of things, but it's a real cool value add that comes into every relationship that I have with every client that I have. And it's a pretty broad summary, but there's a book in there somewhere.
That's awesome. Melanie, I think you're muted.
I had a cat running around the back of me here. So yeah, so it's definitely a great, there's definitely have a book in there for sure. So what I want to say with all this stuff with COVID going on, there's been a lot of businesses, I want to say, got caught with their pants down, so to speak, that they didn't have their tech up. They weren't ready for this shift. So I think a lot of companies weren't embracing innovation, even restaurants. Oh, well, we don't have to worry about being online or having delivery for our food and connecting to DoorDash and Grubhub and all these places, that now all of a sudden you were forced to be pushed into technology. Did you see a lot of that going on with COVID, that businesses were like, oh my gosh, we have to jump in?
I did, unfortunately, and I can speak for the group of the sampling, which is my client base, which is several hundred companies. There's, I don't know, 80% of those people. And I think it is representative of the larger sampling of every business out there that's a small or medium business. Budget usually, and the thinking about spending on IT usually restricts people from doing what they probably should do. And what people should have done is been more prepared. You couldn't have seen this coming, but working remotely, working from home, working from wherever you might be, it's always been something we all do, but it's something that it's like an afterthought. And our position was always like risk management, and here's what you should be doing. And so we saw so many people, the other 20% or so, that weren't ready and that had to scramble. And I can tell you, I don't know, a couple of law firms that we have as clients and most law firms are very cost conscious because partners want to make their money. But at the end of the day, if you can't bill, if you can't work because there's an outage, you can't make money. So we saw several law firms who all of a sudden had to go to a work from home and they just weren't ready. They were using things like Log Me In and Go to My PC, like things that work, but they're not meant to support the type of work from home that people are doing. And I know it happened to certainly restaurants. Well, restaurants are different. They shut down. But professional services businesses, we saw so many people not prepared, scrambling at the last minute. Some of them calling us, but I'm sure every IT company out there was very busy April, May, and June. And it's because people weren't ready. And honestly, I think that they weren't ready because they're not taking the advice of their trusted advisors. And the hardest thing to do sometimes is for me to look somebody in the face or into the computer screen and say, I understand that you don't want to budget for this, but you need to understand that if you don't, the risk is XYZ. And if you go down for an entire day and you can't bill, if you're a lawyer, $350 an hour times however many lawyers, what costs you more, not being able to bill or being prepared for the inevitable power outage? If you're in New Jersey in the middle of the winter, icicles bring power lines down, internet goes down all the time. Like, you've got to be prepared. And if you don't think it's going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you. Like, you need to be ready for it. You don't think your house is going to burn down, but you buy homeowners insurance.
Right.
It's the same thing. You have to do it, except this is more real. Your house isn't going to burn down, but you are going to need to be prepared for something you might bring up, which is cybersecurity breaches. Like, you have to have a budget and you got to think about it. And if you think it's not going to happen to you, I guarantee you it's going to happen to you. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Barnes and Noble, it just recently happened to them, who's in our business. So we're getting ready for this really big launch, and all of a sudden Barnes and Noble got hacked, and they decided not to pay the people, and they're fixing it themselves. But in the meantime, we can't upload our book to Barnes and Noble, so we're having to put some things on hold. What are some of the main IT solutions that you're seeing that a company should have? Like, you walk into a mid-sized company, how do you do the analysis for them?
So the, there's three things that every company should be thinking about right now, and I call them the three C's. It's collaboration, tools. So it could be something like Microsoft Teams. Cloud is a second C, and cybersecurity. So it's collaboration, cloud, and cybersecurity. That mixture, those three things, they make up pretty much everything you need to be thinking about if you're thinking about going forward, if you're thinking about being productive and servicing your clients, right? You need those three things. So if I walk into somebody's office and the first thing we do is a risk assessment. So like what's actually wrong? Let's make sure everything is stable. But beyond that, when it comes to the guidance, okay, what are you doing to collaborate? How are you communicating? Which now is on everybody's mind. What's your cybersecurity posture? Are you doing vulnerability and penetration assessments and testing? Are you like really closing all the gaps? Are you reducing your risk of being breached, or are you like wide open? And cloud is a no-brainer. I mean, anybody who's refreshing hardware in their office should definitely consider the cost benefit of like, do I keep refreshing this stuff in my office, or do I move to a cloud environment? Those are really the three things that we talk about with everybody.
Mm-hmm. So, and what is it? Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah. So is it important to know like which cloud service to use, or does it need to be like an internal cloud in your business? You know what I mean? Because a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I have, Dropbox, or that's my cloud, or you know what I mean? So kind of explain that.
Yeah, I hear that, and I try not to laugh when people say, "Yeah, I have cloud, I have Dropbox."
Yeah.
It's true. Dropbox. Here's the definition of cloud. If it's not in your office, if it's somewhere else, okay, you're in the cloud. It's not here, it's over there. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody else is hosting it. But when you start to think about Dropbox, I mean, it's a brand name, so everybody knows like Dropbox. But is it really a secure, reliable, scalable solution where your business can go from like 10 people to 100 people, and that's going to solve your problem? It might be. It's actually a good example. Dropbox might be a good thing when you're starting up.
Yeah.
But if you're really thinking about expanding, it might not be the best thing, or at least have a plan of what you're going to use to get yourself off the ground, but then what you're going to migrate to easily to really support a business that's growing and that is potentially growing quickly, so that you don't end up in a situation where like, oh my God, we outgrew our startup technology, or maybe you aren't a startup, maybe we just outgrew our technology, and it's this heavy lift to move from what we have to what we need. But there's so many cloud options, to get back to your question. There's so many options in cloud that everything goes back to having a trusted advisor. You're not going to know in your business doing what you guys do, for example, or anybody, a doctor, a lawyer, you're not going to know, what cloud to choose. You need a trusted advisor that actually can say, okay, I understand your business. It goes back to my opening comment. I understand your business because you and I have talked about it. I understand your goals. I understand your risks. I understand where you're going with it. This is the cloud solution, or maybe these two or three are the ones that we should be considering. And here's the costs, here's the pros and cons. And then you make like an educated decision. And it's a very short list. I mean, you're looking at Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and a few others that are really like the best ones out there. There's tons to choose from, but no, you don't want to, we can laugh at it. You don't want to choose Dropbox. I mean, Dropbox is not something that's going to support your business's needs overall. It's just not. Like, you need somebody to really give you advice. And that's really the answer. Find a trusted advisor, and don't think that you are going to skate by having, somebody who's a friend of the owner's family, who is an IT guy on the side, who's going to support your 40-person firm. It's not possible. Like, you have to get a trusted advisor, and you need to make that investment. Otherwise, you're going to be paying for it down the road in a lot more expensive ways when you get breached, or when it doesn't work.
Yeah. So you say you go in and you look at fixing businesses' processes along the way. What are some of the process? Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, cool. I'll give you an example. So I have a client of mine that's in the construction business. They do some like very specialized, unusual construction. and they know me from a long time ago, and they reached out to me and they said, hey, can you help us? We're having problems in our business. And so I said, what kind of problems? So they began talking about problems with billing, problems with HR. And so they went down the list. I'm like, wow, it's like every single like silo in your business is like, seems like you're struggling. So I went into their company, took me 3 months, and I interviewed everybody in the company, mostly the high level people, and I reverse engineered by documenting the existing processes. So I would say to finance, okay, tell me every single thing that you do in finance. How does finance run? How do you invoice? How do you collect? Is it QuickBooks that you're using? Fine. What are the workflows in QuickBooks? Tell me every problem you have. Tell me everything you do that you feel like you're wasting time. Tell me what takes up the most of your time. And I did that in every single part of their business. And when I was done, I must have 20 pages of these Visio workflow drawings. And I'm like highlighting, here's where you're losing time. Here's where you're losing time. And when it was all said and done, I said, look, this is really two things. There's people problems. You have the wrong people in the wrong positions. You have to define roles better. And I said, you have process problems, meaning that you're not even using the right systems. So I said, when I had the list of things from finance, from sales, from marketing, from operations, and I didn't know their construction business, but I know enough to know how to see the breakdowns and workflows and processes to say, here's all your gaps. We have to fill the gaps. And we filled the gaps, which is most often the case, by getting a really solid piece of software that handled each part of that organization's workflows, and then taking and redesigning the workflows one section at a time, and then putting one new process in, put the system in place, and then we put the new processes in place, and we spent weeks training everybody. This is years ago. They still run the business the same exact way that I designed for them. And I've done that for so many people. It has nothing to do with IT. That's just something that I do for people because I'm good at it. But the same thing applies when I do something for somebody technology-wise. We're doing the same thing. We're looking at what the problem is, what the risks are, assessing it, and then filling the gaps with some solution. It's just that I can do it for an entire company. I can walk into any company, reverse engineer solutions, and solve their problems. I'll give you one more quick example. I have an existing client who is in the I don't want to give them away. They're in the business of like the garment business, like the cleaning business. And they have a lot of trucks on the road, and they're doing pickups and drop-offs, and they're washing things. And they really were like struggling with how to be profitable. So I said to the owner, who we do cloud for, I'm like, listen, do me a favor. I'm not going to charge you anything. Just work with me. Give me like 2 days of your time. Come into my office. Let's get in front of a whiteboard, and let's reverse engineer all your processes. And we did it. And I found, he didn't recognize it. I found where he was losing $500,000 a year in revenue.
Holy cow.
And I pointed it out to him, and he was like, oh my God, how do we fix it? I said, you have the software already in place to run your business. You need to put some workflows in here and here and here to create accountability, to track better where people are, how long they're spending, how many times they have to run back to your shop because they forgot something on a truck, which goes back to a loading the truck workflow. I took him through all this, and I'm like, it's $500,000 easily. You can start that process tomorrow. Just fix these workflow problems. So that's what I do.
I love that, because it's really just like that little tweak, right? That millimeter of change in the workflow or in the system, and then $500,000 change, right? I mean, that's awesome.
I don't know if he did it actually, but I gave him all the information.
Yeah.
It's like there's like this. I heard somebody say once. I'm not sure who it was. I think it was Ed Milet, is a guy that I follow.
Yeah, I like him too.
You get on a plane and you're destined for you leave California, LA, and you're going to New York, and you just make a 1 degree shift. You end up, I don't know, in the Bahamas or something. Yeah. And it's amazing how powerful a small change in your mindset is. It has this domino effect. It impacts everything in your life. And looking at business processes is the same thing. You can just make 1 or 2 seemingly insignificant changes, but they actually have this like huge effect on everything that they touch. So like one of the things that I think is one of the most powerful abilities of an effective leader is the ability to see what other people around you don't see and can't see. It's just the same thing. It's like people have these blind spots, and the wider you can or the more you can see through experience and emotional intelligence and just wisdom, which is a combination of all that, the better leader you are. Because I can tell you, in my own company, I see things every day that people don't see in finance, in the day-to-day operations, in things as simple as scheduling somebody to go on site. I ask questions that like nobody else thought of. I'm not smart in that. I'm not like any smarter than anybody else. I have an ability to see things that other people don't see. And I see the same thing in other business owners that I know that are very successful. And it's the ability to sit in a room and almost know what other people are thinking, and to read that room, and to know when to change the subject, to know when somebody's getting bored, to know when you've lost somebody's attention because they're sitting there going like this. And it's like, okay, I better change the subject quick. Like it's all unspoken. And it all ties back into identifying processes and workflows. It's all the same thing. It all connects. You have to be able to see it. And for as many people that I know that can see it, it's because I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I'm friendly with a lot of business owners. 95% of the people that I know actually don't have the ability to do that. And they could never be successful business owners because they can't see it. They can't see it.
Yeah. Would you say that's the one thing that helps someone become an effective business leader, is just kind of what you just described?
It's one of the things. Another thing is that you need to be humble enough to realize that you need mentors, and that no matter how old you are or what stage you're at, you must have mentors, and you must listen to them, and you must go out of your way to speak to them, and you must go out of your way to contact them and bounce things off of them, and you must not let your ego get in your way, or you will crash and burn. Which I see that a lot. I have friends who have very big egos who do well, who have multi-million-dollar companies that will never grow any bigger than they are today because of the owner's ego. And it's a weakness, but it's, if you don't see that, but it's a strength. If you really can surround yourself with people that are smarter than you and really listen to them, you still have the final say if it's your company, but you have to listen to people around you, and you've got to take their advice. I would say that, and don't fear making mistakes. I make decisions all the time. So I would say, make a decision. Don't be afraid to make a decision. Even if it's the wrong decision, you've got to make a decision. You can't get stuck in analysis paralysis, because that's the worst thing that would happen. I've made so many decisions that have been the wrong decisions, and then you weigh like the potential impact of a bad decision. So, I'm not going to like make a decision that's going to put me out of business, but I might make a decision that could potentially lose me a customer, or could gain me 10 customers, or make a decision that technically could impact our cloud in a negative way, or it can impact it in a positive. I mean, I can make up 1,000 scenarios, but you can't be afraid to make a decision. I made a decision one time to buy a business, and it was before I was in IT full time. And I invested $100,000 in the business, thought I could run it. This is one of my best mistakes ever. Within 6 months, I walked away from the business, left $100,000 behind, and I called up one of my mentors, and I told him the story, and he told me his story. He did something similar once, and he said to me, "Matt, it cost you $100,000 to get the best education you're ever going to get. How much did you learn from that 6-month experience?" I said, "It's priceless what I learned," and it's true. I mean, it's not easy to lose $100,000, but I made it back 10 times over, from what I learned and going into other businesses and not making those mistakes again. So you can't be afraid to do that. You're going to lose. You can't always win, but in the end, you have to make decisions. So there's big decisions and there's small decisions, but you got to make them, and you can't be afraid. You can be afraid, but you can't let the fear stop you.
Right.
And that's one thing that I've noticed that is common among many of my successful entrepreneur friends, that they take risks, calculated risks, and those risks ultimately, more often than not, do pay off. They do. The mergers I did, the acquisitions I did, I didn't know that the relationships weren't going to work out, and I'd end up having to buy out the partners. It was a risk. Everybody I know said, "Don't do it. Don't ever partner with anybody. Don't do it, because you have the vision, you have the energy, you have it lives within your mind and your heart, and you're going to have a problem." And they were right, except I ended up, my vision and my determination and my commitment to what I believe in was the right thing for this company ultimately won out in the long run, because the other guys just gave up because they didn't have the commitment, the dedication, or the vision, or the ability to execute. Right. So it was like, just, you got to go. And I bought them all out,
That's awesome.
Well, thanks for being on
forget
our
what you
show
asked me.
today, Matt. It was great information.
Yeah, we could keep talking
That's
about
all.
this forever. Well, tell us where people can go to find more about you or to book you on their podcast.
The best thing to do is just go on LinkedIn and just look me up on LinkedIn. It's Matt Rosenthal and my company is Mindcore. You can email me, and I'm sure you guys will add this on, but you can put it's Matt, MATT.Rosenthal at mind hyphen, it's like a dash, core.com. And our website is www.mind-core.com. But the best thing to do is to send me a message on LinkedIn. And I mean, I'm happy to give you anybody like just advice and just talk and just give you ideas. And if it can help, the most important thing is being able to be of service and to help people that need help. So if there's something I can give you some advice on, I'd be glad to give you advice.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to you. It's good karma. When you help people out, it always comes back to you tenfold.
Absolutely. And if anybody has any IT services they need, obviously give me a call.
Yes. Well, thanks for coming today. Remember to subscribe to our podcast, and we always have a great show for you. We just had a show with Jay Wong about podcasting and how to get to the top 100 on iTunes. So check that out as well. Remember to subscribe. And if you're looking to become a #1 best-selling author and turn your content into a book, we would love to help you here at Elite Online Publishing. We'll see you next time. Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full-spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.